How does the league view the San Francisco 49ers? Do they think they're still getting better? Do they think they're getting worse? Do they think they're about the same? We're going to go through all of that, talk about what the league thinks about the San Francisco 49ers and the way they've been built for the 2024 season. Plus, do I agree with their assessment? All that and more in this episode of 49ers Cutback.
From the alley-oops at Kezar to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm excited to talk about this because the league continues to let their views be known about the San Francisco 49ers. And it's always nice when you can get a clear, concise picture of what others within the league think of your football team, because sometimes you're so close to it, maybe you don't exactly see everything that other teams and other personnel, coaching staff, executives see about your football team. Because I don't think very many people around the league and fans around the league especially understand the opposing team's football team the way that the fans do. We live it, we breathe it every single day. We're examining our football team. We can name our players 1 to 91. We know where they went to college. We know how long they've been in the league. We know how they're expected to fit into Kyle Shanahan's offense or into Nick Sorensen's defense, or whether they're going to help Brian Schneider's special teams. There's so much that we know because we live it every single day. But there's also opinions from people that aren't so close to it. Sometimes when you're so close, maybe you're not seeing the full picture. Maybe you're too close to the situation to understand the other perspective. So it's always nice to take a step back, look at what others are saying about the football team. In some regards, you might agree. Yeah, you know what? This is correct. That's an opinion that I believe is the same. You might look at it and say, you know what? I never thought of it that way. But now that you're bringing that up and how it's looked at from that perspective, it gives me a different take on things. And then there's some that come through and you're like, that is just crazy. You don't understand the 49ers football team at all and how it's being built. And so it's always a fun conversation when you can look at the different stats, the different rankings. You got all the rankings coming out from ESPN and Jeremy Fowler. You've got the rankings from PFF. There's a lot of things there. But with the Fowler rankings, what's interesting is you get high-level executives and coaches commenting on individual players or even position groups. And so you can get a clear, concise picture on how the other 31 teams are looking at the San Francisco 49ers. And with all things, it's not always the clearest of pictures, but you can somewhat get an idea. And some of these are probably going to enlighten you. Some of them are probably going to frustrate you. Some of them are probably going to excite you because they feel pretty good about some of the 49ers positions. Not all. And they feel pretty good about some of the 49ers players, but that's to be expected, right? We have one of the best rosters in the NFL. John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have put together a team that competes year in and year out for Super Bowls. If you throw out the 2020 season because of all the injuries, the 49ers are basically in the NFC Championship game every single year. They're built to make plays. They're built to get long playoff runs and hopefully at some point bring home that sixth Lombardi. So please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe, please give it a 5-star rating. And if you're going to bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is your number one source for all your sports betting needs this season. From baseball, golf, soccer, right to all the top fights in the UFC, MMA, and boxing. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online, the game starts here. So this all got started because of some of the most recent rankings that came out. It sort of got my attention. And part of it was the quarterback rankings that came out today. So if you're not really aware of it, Jeremy Fowler put out his top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, and this is what he got from executives and coaches around the league. This is their opinions, and then he factors them together and figures out the percentage and then ranks them. So this isn't exactly his take on it, but the league overall's take on it. And I think it's always a interesting conversation when it comes to quarterback, and especially Brock Purdy, where exactly he's ranked amongst the top quarterbacks in the league. Because first off, he's won a lot of playoff games. He's won a lot of football games in general. And he's proven to be a very talented quarterback. But he's also going to be coming up for contract after this season. And of course, where he's ranked is probably going to somewhat determine how much money he gets. But if you win, that definitely overtakes all when it comes to the stat line. If you win a Super Bowl, you're going to be thought of one of the elite quarterbacks. That's just the way it goes. But I think Brock Purdy is one of those interesting ones because there's an argument both ways for Brock Purdy. Either he's not talented enough, or he has just enough talent, or he's a system quarterback, or he's got too many weapons, or there's all these different things and qualifiers that they put on Brock Purdy and the quarterback position. So everything that Brock Purdy's done over his short career, and really has been a whirlwind career for Brock Purdy, including winning big football games, but also dealing with a really bad elbow injury that he overcame. But none of those accomplishments were good enough to convince the league that Purdy deserved to be in the top 10 quarterbacks. Not him being MVP, not him getting to a Super Bowl in his second season as a starter, not him doing all the things that he did. Jeremy Fowler surveyed 80 league executives, coaches, and scouts, and Purdy's name was not mentioned. He was, however, able to receive an honorable mention. So thank you so much for the honorable mention to the NFL league. Like, come on, honorable mention, really? So let's talk about this a little bit. Who are the top 10 quarterbacks for the NFL? Who they put ahead of Brock Purdy? Number one, Patrick Mahomes. I don't think that is surprising. All the Super Bowls, I mean, he's just dynamic. Joe Burrow, when he's healthy, he's a pretty good quarterback. Josh Allen, I don't think that's surprising. All the big physical tools. Lamar Jackson, of course, we saw him overtake Purdy and win the MVP during the season. Matthew Stafford, another guy who won a Super Bowl but is injured a lot. Justin Herbert, interesting. Justin Herbert, talent-wise, you got to look at the big arm, the strength. All that makes sense. Never won a playoff game, though. Could change with Harbaugh, and I think they're not, ranking wins, of course, and that's always an argument. Are wins a quarterback stat, or are they just a team stat? I'll let you decide that. CJ Stroud, fantastic season, deserves to be in the top 10. No arguments from me. Number 8, Aaron Rodgers. Interesting. Didn't play the entire season because of an Achilles, but Aaron Rodgers is still one of the best quarterbacks. Here's where it gets interesting. When you get to 9 and 10 especially, you get Jared Goff at number 9 for the Detroit Lions. And I'm not sure that he's better than Brock Purdy right now. I've seen Brock Purdy outmatch him in the NFC Championship game, and I know that's team versus team, but I think that you could put Brock Purdy into Detroit's offense, and Brock Purdy could operate that offense at a higher level than Jared Goff with more accuracy and with some other tools that he has, including scrambling and just his quick decision-making. So this is the first time that I see a position where I question why isn't Brock Purdy ahead of Jared Goff. And then number 10, Dak Prescott. And all we've seen from Dak Prescott is him amass pretty good numbers during the regular season and then absolutely disappear when the games mean the most. And at some point, playoff games have to matter. I know a win might not play to the quarterback stat ratio, but what about performance? He often throws too many interceptions, turns the ball over, and we've seen it firsthand as 49er fans. Thank you, Dakota Rain, for making it rain interceptions and turning over the football. They got absolutely hammered by the Packers last season. The 2 years before that, the 49ers eliminated them with Dak Prescott making classic blunders and throwing interceptions that you just can't do at that point. There is nothing about what Dak Prescott has done in the postseason when it matters the most makes him better than Jared Goff, that makes him better than Brock Purdy, that makes him better than Jalen Hurts. To me, Jalen Hurts not being on the top 10, but Dak Prescott being on the top 10 doesn't make any sense. Jalen Hurts has won in the playoffs. He's had success in the playoffs. I think they're similar players, but to me, this is one of those interesting ones where I just don't get it. And Brock Purdy is not like, a player that is usually put in the top 10, though. Here I am arguing against Goff and I'm arguing against Prescott, but PFF also ranked Brock Purdy out of the top 10. They ranked him at number 13. And this is what they said. They're comfortable with his ranking on the list because even though he's had success, they think it goes more with the talented offense. And I'll give credit to PFF. We're going to go through some of the stuff that they say about other positions, but they do say how good the 49ers weapons are around the bend. Now, one thing that nobody's taking into account about Brock Purdy is the fact that there was 37% of the snaps last season that he should have been sacked. He was likely to be sacked on 37% of his dropbacks, and he made somebody miss or he got out of the pocket and he did something about it. That right there alone should be an extra element in a positive manner for Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy is just really, really fantastic. And the things that he's done, including his 78.3% adjusted completion rate, was a top 5 number in 2023. Top 5. He's basically top 5 in so many of the rankings. How he's out of the top 10, it boggles the mind. It means they're giving tremendous credit to all the 49ers playmakers, to Kyle Shanahan, and they're saying, you know what, he's just a system quarterback. And that's unfortunate. That's what some of the guys say in their presser or in their comments to Jeremy Fowler about him, is that he is a system quarterback. Listen to this. He's very good at navigating the pocket, buying time, using his legs. You're not going to win because of him in most cases. That's what an NFC executive told Jeremy Fowler. He's a really good system quarterback. And here it comes, that moniker of system quarterback that can absolutely frustrate anyone. And you know what? When has it been a negative thing to operate well within the system? Jalen Hurts operates well within the system. He does a good job. The better the system, the better the quarterback play. So to me, this is pretty interesting. Some of the guys ahead, including Jared Goff, who, hey, you know what? He played really good last season. So I get it, top 10. I think Dak Prescott's the one, though, because I think if you put Brock Purdy, at number 10 or at number 9, I don't think anyone really argues it. I mean, I guess in this case, Jeremy Fowler says executives aren't ranking him there, and PFF doesn't have him ranking there. But Brock Purdy's 5.4% big-time throw percentage is what people are going off of. They say that produces below-average arm talent. So here we go again. Below-average arm talent is one of the things that they're criticizing him for. So what are the things that the executives are still looking at? Size, speed, arm strength, all those things that they want to put to top 10. Justin Herbert, that's a factor. Yet all of us know that Brock Purdy is a tremendous, and a superpower of his, according to Steve Young, is his processing power, how quickly he processes coverage, gets rid of the football on time, and puts it there with such great accuracy that his yak monster receivers can make plays. It's a tremendous stat that Brock Purdy doesn't get enough credit for. They do say he's a good enough anticipator. Good enough? He is an elite processor of information. This is where we get a little bit of a problem where I see that people, comment about him and the whole, he doesn't push the ball enough, which makes him a game manager, is just so far from the truth. So it's so interesting that they have this belief. They believe that he's done a good job, but he's not one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league. I'm curious what all of you think. If you think that Brock Purdy's one of the top 10 quarterbacks in the league, he is 4-2 in the playoffs, and Dak Prescott is 2-5, just to give everyone a clear picture. And I know you don't want to talk about wins, but at some point, it has to make a difference. Brock Purdy, a controversial one, So here, they still don't believe the 49ers have an elite quarterback. They don't believe he's top 10. They believe he's tier 3. So in that case, they still don't think the 49ers have attained that player that can win them a football game. Yet all I know is every single time that Brock Purdy was in the playoffs and was down, they came back. And the only time he didn't have a chance to come back was because he left the field with the lead. And then Patrick Mahomes did Patrick Mahomes things and went down and scored. But Brock Purdy proved that he can box with the best in the entire NFL. And I believe that he's a top 10 quarterback because of it. And a lot of it because of that elite ability to process information. Now let's talk about the 49ers running back room. And, when it comes to Christian McCaffrey, he is the first place guy. And one of the offensive coaches in the league said he does everything exceptional. And his explosiveness, vision, technique, versatility, great teammate, hardest worker, dedicated in the offseason. The only thing holding him back was when he was hurt, but he's exactly how you would draw up a football player. That's high praise for Christian McCaffrey. And we know we've got the best running back in the league. And last year, Christian McCaffrey was behind Nick Chubb, and there wasn't as much love. But now it's completely broken the mold of what a running back is. I mean, he's just fantastic. He's transcending the game right now with his effectiveness to do things. But what does PFF think about the 49ers running back room? Well, they rank the 49ers running back room number 1 in the NFL. So you may have a 13th best or out of the top 10, best quarterback, but your running back room is the number 1 running back room. And just like Christian McCaffrey being number 1 amongst executives and personnel around the league, according to Jeremy Fowler, he's also number 1 when it came to PFF. McCaffrey generated the most PFF wins above average among running backs last season at 0.25. Elijah Mitchell also remains to be a very solid running back 2 option. Scream that louder for the people in the back. I think this is interesting that from an outside source, Elijah Mitchell is looked at as a positive running back 2. And I think you always look at running back 2 and the injuries with Elijah Mitchell, and it's concerning, but he does have the talent. I mean, you go back and you watch the NFC Championship game, and Christian McCaffrey makes a run around the right side and lands on his head when he gets tackled. And here you are inside the red zone, 2-yard line, chance to go up by 10 points to the Detroit Lions with just over 3 minutes left. And a cold Elijah Mitchell comes in, and Kyle Shanahan has so much confidence in him. He gives him the rock. And you know why? Elijah Mitchell doesn't fumble, and he's played in big moments and had big plays. That's something that's huge for the 49ers. Kyle can count on him, run the football, pass block, do everything you need to do. And I expect an expanded role if Elijah Mitchell can stay healthy, more carries. Kyle Shanahan has alluded to the fact that they probably won't run McCaffrey as much. They'll take some of his snaps away as far as running the football. Hopefully Elijah Mitchell gets those, because we know Elijah Mitchell has proven he can be that guy. So solid running back 2 there. You have the addition to Isaac Guerendo, who PFF believes he could be an upside running back 3, which will be interesting because you've also got Jordan Mason, who a lot of people believe should be competing with Elijah Mitchell for running back 2. And then, of course, you just throw in all-pro fullback Kyle Juszczyk to the list, and that puts the 49ers over the top as the number 1 running back room. And I think that's correct. You have 2 legitimate veterans behind Christian McCaffrey to spell him and get carries. Both of them are getting better. Mitchell's proven he could be a starter in this league, nearly 1,000 yards in 11 games his rookie season. And then Isaac Guerendo, a guy with 4.3 speed and tremendous upside. Now, what about the wide receiver room? Well, the PFF rankers, they believe the 49ers have the best wide receiver room in the entire NFL. And they said no pass-catching unit can stack up with the 49ers' talent. So how about that? Not only do they have wide receivers Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, both top 10 in PFF receiver rankings. So you've got those guys doing their things when it comes to receiver rankings. That's huge. 2 top 10 guys. And I think that we pretty much believe that those guys can play with the top guys in the league. And of course, outside of that, you have plenty of weapons as well. But San Francisco easily earned the best team receiving grade in 2023 at 91.0 with no other club eclipsing 86. 5-point difference between the 49ers receivers and the rest of the league. That just shows how good they are. Then throw in Jawan Jennings and rookie Pearsall, and it feels like the 49ers are stocked with an embarrassment of receiving riches. And that's the truth. The 49ers have Jawan Jennings, who is one of the most clutch when it comes to catching the football on third down, getting key first downs, and the occasional explosive play, a la the Super Bowl. And then you add, in addition to Ricky Pearsall, one of the best route running receivers in the entire draft. He's got good hands. He's got a good wingspan. He takes hits and he's able to get back up. To me, 49ers embarrassment of riches is absolutely correct. And PFF's got this right. The 49ers have the best receiving group in the NFL. And you look around the league and there's some very talented receiving groups, but 49ers take the cake. So right now the league says, you know what, 49ers, you don't have a top 10 quarterback. Your quarterback's probably between 11 and 15. But you have the best running back room, including the best running back. You have the best wide receiver room, including 2 of the top 10 wide receivers in the entire league. And when you throw in your other weapons, you're absolutely unbelievable. In fact, you're 5 points better than everyone else when it comes to receiving grade. So far, they like the 49ers offense. Now, what about George Kittle in the tight end room? Well, we know that they like George Kittle. And Jeremy Fowler and ESPN really like George Kittle, but they have him at number 2 behind Travis Kelce. So Travis Kelce takes the cake with the coaches and, of course, the front office personnel and scouts around the league. They believe Travis Kelce is the best tight end. But PFF believes it's George Kittle. And the reason they believe it's George Kittle is because of the things he does. Number 1, he earned their highest overall grade at 87.6 amongst tight ends for his regular season play last season. He also received the highest run blocking grade at 81.1 and the highest receiving grade at 85.9% for his position group. So when you are leading in all those categories, number 1, your overall grade's better than everyone else. Your run blocking grade's better than everyone else. Your receiving grade is better than everyone else. You're probably better than everyone else. And when you look at Travis Kelce and George Kittle, it's not exactly apples to apples comparison. George Kittle is the well-rounded, well-built, put-together tight end that does it all. He is the prototypical new tight end that you want, the guy that can do it all. Travis Kelce is more of a receiving threat, a guy that can do a lot of big things in the receiving game. He makes all the big catches. He gets open at the biggest moments. I think Travis Kelce is a fantastic tight end. But do I prefer George Kittle? Absolutely. And why is that? Well, I like a guy that can do it all. I like a guy that can block because that's the nature of the game. The 49ers run the football nearly 49% of the time. You need a guy that can win blocking the football or blocking for the football carrier. Now, no one's going to turn down Travis Kelce, but to me, George Kittle definitely does that. In comparison, the second highest graded tight end was Mark Andrews of the Baltimore Ravens with an 80 overall grade. That was 7.6 points lower than George Kittle. George Kittle also the only tight end last year with 1,000 yards receiving, and he's supposed to be the not as good receiving threat. It's pretty interesting. I think Kittle had a great year last year, flew under the radar as far as a lot of people believe, but I think the league overall believes that Kittle and Travis Kelce are 2 of the best. And of course, the 49ers tight end room got elevated a little bit with Logan Thomas, a starter last year, definitely one of the top 32 tight ends in the league after going through the tight end list. Where you put him, that's a bigger question and a question for another day. But when you have 2 of the best, 2 of the top 32 in the league, you've got to be one of the top tight end rooms in the entire league. And question marks about tight end 3 definitely abound. Is it going to be one of the young players, Cameron Latu, Braden Willis? Is it going to be Eric Saubert, Jake Tungus, Mason Pline? I think Tungus and Pline are probably a little bit further out, but the 49ers definitely are trending in the right direction. The NFL believes, according to PFF, they have the number 1 tight end. According to Jeremy Fowler and ESPN, they have the number 2 tight end. Either way, they have one of the best tight end rooms and best duos of tight ends in the NFL with that 1-2 punch, adding a starting caliber player in Logan Thomas. Now, here's where it gets interesting. because the offensive line has definitely been something that people have been talking about. And Jeremy Fowler says that, when you're talking about Trent Williams is by far one of the best to do it. An NFL coordinator was talking about Trent Williams, says he does it all at a high level. Still, protection, run game, second level stuff downfield. No weaknesses in his game, and I haven't seen his skill set diminish. 35 years old, and people around the league are saying, you know what? He's not getting worse. He's getting better. He's the back-to-back winner, playing like he's 25, leading all tackles with a 95.8 pass block win rate in year 13. Williams is an elite pass blocker, but he is a dominant run blocker as well. Whatever the 49ers need to gain yardage on the ground, they often run to the left behind Williams. So Trent Williams still getting his flowers and well-deserving, as he's the top offensive lineman in the entire league for the fourth consecutive year. And you know what you're getting from Trent. So we've just seen it. McCaffrey, best running back. George Kittle, 1A or 1B, best tight end in the league. And now you get to the offensive line, and this has been one of the biggest question marks surrounding the 49ers during the offseason, and none of it has to do with Trent Williams. Trent Williams has been absolutely fantastic, but here's where it gets interesting. PFF ranked the San Francisco 49ers number 24th overall, and Jeremy Fowler didn't even have the offensive linemen on the interior part of the offensive line. They didn't even make the rankings. No one got honorable mention the way Brock Purdy did. The 49ers offensive line is looked down on, definitely. So it's one of those interesting things where Jake Brendel, John Feliciano, Aaron Banks, and Colt McKivitz are not thought of as good players at all. Now, according to PFF last year, John Feliciano was the 49ers' highest graded interior offensive lineman with an 81.2 mark for his regular season play last season. Neither Jake Brendel, who got 63.9, Aaron Banks got a 54.9, or Spencer Burford, who got a 50.4, earned high marks, showing room for improvement. With Burford, room for improvement makes sense. He's a young player. Aaron Banks was dealing with injuries. That could have definitely hurt his numbers overall. One interesting fact was Jake Brendel actually got better in the playoffs. His overall ranking went from 63.9 to 71.2 in the playoffs. But Banks and Burford did not see such an increase. Now, Burford did get better in the playoffs. He improved close to 4%, while Banks went down 6%, which we know that's something that Banks has been struggling with, is those injuries. And Banks allowed a team-high 13 pressures in the postseason. That's why they had to make sure they added depth with Dominic Pooney, and they continue to have depth behind John Feliciano and Aaron Banks, because when those injuries come on, you have to have a formidable player that can step in and give you good interior offensive line play. Last year, they were lacking in that department. Once they felt like John Feliciano stepped in that role, they didn't feel Burford could move to left. He hadn't practiced there. And once Feliciano became a starter, you lack the versatility on the interior. So that's something the 49ers definitely got to get better at. Ultimately, this is from one of the Pro Football Focus analysts, Trevor Sakimia. He says, ultimately, San Francisco needs better offensive line play in 2024, and the only significant addition the team made was third-round pick Dominic Pooney. Doesn't feel like San Francisco got better this offseason. So, outside point of view, doesn't feel the 49ers did enough on the offensive line to get better. And so, if you're not taking into account Aaron Banks' injuries and how that affected his play, where he was playing really well, or that John Feliciano being in the starting lineup down the stretch is a good sign, then you're right. The 49ers didn't do enough. So, I mean, outside appearance and what people think, executives and overall PFF scores about the offensive line, I think a lot of 49er fans believe the same thing. And so they're going to have to get a lot better. I thought the interesting part was that Brendel got better in the playoffs, and so did Burford. Even though it was subtle, they did get better. So that's interesting to watch. But we will have to monitor Jake Brendel there. So 13th best quarterback, number 1 running back and running back room, number 1 tight end. probably one of the better tight end rooms in the league now that they have Logan Thomas, but the 24th best offensive line. So something's got to shake out there. When it comes to skill players, oh yeah, receiver room number one as well. When it comes to skill players, they're the best. When it comes to quarterback, they think they're middle of the road, pretty close, just in front of middle of the road. And when it comes to offensive line, they're 24th best, and that's with having the best offensive lineman in the league, Trent Williams. That's not good. So let's talk about the defense and the secondary. The San Francisco 49ers secondary ranked number 2 in the NFL as far as rankings. So the secondary doesn't boast household names, but these guys have definitely done a good job. Travis Ward, he had an 86.5 coverage grade in 2023, and then the 49ers added Isaac Yedem, who had an 80.4 ranking last year. That's really, really good. There's a couple of guys that they have at the top to go with De'Amari Lenore, and then, of course, they added more guys when it came to the draft. The 49ers ranking second when it came to secondary, which I think is a good thing. When you look at the safety, there's a lot of people, especially in Jeremy Fowler, when it comes to executives, that are a little concerned about Talanoa Hufanga. Hufanga is a playmaker, an unnamed NFL personnel evaluator told Fowler, but I don't love him in coverage. He has to be playing top down on the ball, but he's incredibly instinctual and physical in that role. So while Hufanga earned NFL honors for his performance in 2022, he surrendered 6 touchdowns last season. That's according to PFF. That tied for the league high among safeties. And of course, he was injured for most of the year. An NFC scout added, he plays with great edge about him, has nice football spirit about him. So the things that we like about Talanoa Hufanga, the instincts, but there were some things that he definitely struggled with last year. How much of that was the role that he was asked to play within Steve Wilkes' defense, and how much was him maybe not being able to play fully instinctual the way he did in 2022, where he jumped on everything. He used his pre-snap reads to give him the advantage against opposing offenses until offenses figured it out and then took advantage of his preconceived notions on what they were going to do, and then manipulated him by formation and look, and then ran something else. So he has to have that pre-snap ability, play with instinct, but also allow his eyes to reveal things post-snap so you don't get caught up in bad situations. Let's see what Hufanga can do and how much he can grow in the offseason. And I know he's coming back from injury, and the hope is that he's going to be ready for the regular season. But here you got the 49ers with the second best DB room in the entire league. Be Travis Ward, Isaac Yedem, De'Amari Lenore, Hufanga, and Jair Brown. So that's a good thing for the San Francisco 49ers defense. They're going to need it. And, Nick Sorensen needs these guys to do really well. When it comes to the 49ers defensive line, though they added so many guys on the defensive line for help, it just wasn't exactly the best situation for the 49ers. According to, some Jeremy Fowler, they believe that Nick Bosa and Javon Hargrave aren't as good as they were before. Bosa fell all the way to number 4, best edge rusher in the league, while Hargrave fell down to number 10. So when it came to D-line, some things changed there. Now with PFF, they ranked the 49ers at second best defensive line in the entire league. That's even with the loss of Eric Armstead. They believe that with Nick Bosa, being one of those guys that's often talked about as defensive player of the year and racking up over 95 quarterback pressures in 2023, they believe that, they're still going to do some things. Plus, you throw in the fact that Hargrave is one of the best in the league as an interior pass rusher. 23 sacks still ranks him in the top 5 in the NFL over the last 3 seasons from an interior defensive lineman. He still gets it done at a high level. Last year, 7.5 sacks. And then Leonard Floyd now being the complement to Nick Bosa on the outside is going to be really good for the 49ers. Their concern, they had the Jets number 1, by the way. Their concern is depth, but they think that the top end is so good. So they're talking about probably not giving the 49ers much credit, because we'll see what happens with Yetur Gross-Matos, but also the defensive tackle spot, right? What's Malik Collins going to be in this defense? What's Jordan Elliott going to be in this defense? Kevin Givens, Kalia Davis, question marks there. I think having questions about the 49ers defensive line depth, I think it's understandable. So 49ers, though, ranked number 2 as far as PFF when it comes to defensive line, even though Jeremy Fowler and ESPN has the 49ers, Nick Bosa and Javon Hargrave falling down their lists. Both still top 10s in their position, but yeah, they've definitely fallen a little bit. Now, with linebacker, the San Francisco 49ers, according to PFF, have the number 1 linebacker in the NFL in Fred Warner, and Jeremy Fowler's group believes the same as well. He is one of the best, and his PFF grade of 80.0 in each of the last 4 seasons, he's been getting it done, make him the number 1 spot, and that puts the 49ers number 2 behind the Jets, with PFF saying, hey, if it wasn't for Greenlaw's injury and he was able to start the season, they would unquestionably be the number 1 linebacker room in the NFL. They signed Devondre Campbell, who has earned a PFF grade of 65 in each of the past 3 seasons. So they've gotten a player that can step in and give them a cushion until Dre Greenlaw comes back. So the fact that the 49ers linebacker room and that duo of Devondre Campbell and Fred Warner is still thought to be one of the top 2 in the league is fantastic. By the time Dre gets back, after 8 games, 9 games, whenever it ends up being, those 3 together are going to be an absolute wrecking crew. That will be the number 1 linebacker room in the NFL. So you're talking number 2 secondary, you're talking number 2 defensive line, number 2 linebacker group. 49ers sound like they got a darn good defense according to the league and PFF. And when you're looking at the offense, it's a little bit different there, where you've got the 13th best quarterback, the 24th best offensive line, but then every other position, wide receiver, tight end, running back, you've got the number 1 team. So the NFL league executives think the 49ers are a really good football team. In fact, PFF has them ranked the number 1 team in the entire league when you're talking about talent. So it's interesting to hear what others say about the 49ers current roster and where they're ranked. And we know we've got really good football players, and I think some of this we can agree and some of it we can disagree with. I am curious what you all think. Let me know in the comment section down below if you believe these rankings are correct. Do you think some of them are actually too high, or do you think they're too low? I'm really curious. So where do you put Brock Purdy? Is he a top 10 quarterback? Is he a top 15? Did PFF get it right? I'm really, really curious what you have to say. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Appreciate it. Listen to audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. And of course, this episode is brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. And remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.